Hello and welcome back to yet another installment of my channel. And today it is going to be more technically oriented. Of course, we're still going to listen to some beautiful music, but the main thrust of today's installment will be the technical details. And today's installment will fall mainly under this how-to banner. And specifically, I will try to answer some questions that people have been asking me on how to convert the phono stages into head preamps. We already mentioned it before, and it was mentioned in some passing way here and there, but today I would like to give a little bit more comprehensive coverage of the whole process, what it takes, and the possible ways of implementations, which will depend on your overall objective. And I'm sure you're noticing the change of scenery, because today we're going to be broadcasting from my formerly armory room, which still retains some of its charm, but due to serious, very severe shortage of space in my audio room, it has become the place where I would have to perform some work. Today we're going to be looking at 4 different units. We're going to be looking at specific details of how the conversion was done in each particular case, at some strong points and also some negatives. And we're going to start our search with the simplest possible way of implementing such a function, and I call it unit number 1, the simplicity. And as we start looking at that unit, I'm sure you will realize that that name has some significance to it. As we keep talking about different ways, one question always enters your mind. Are you striving for the simplicity or for convenience, or some combination of the two? And another question is the convenience gonna get in the way of sound quality? Or to get the best sound quality, you have to go for the ultimate simplicity. And that's a very, very serious question, and we'll try to provide some answers today. And here it is, our first contestant, the simplest possible unit in this line of conversions. Let's take a step back and consider what all those models have in common. And they basically all based on the original design of my phono stage, whether it be P10 or P5 from Balanced Audio Technology. It is a very convenient vehicle for a number of reasons. It's all tube, 10-tube circuit. It's got very nice sound. It's been widely recognized as one of the very high quality units on the market. And yes, if you shop around carefully, you will be able to find units in nice condition for probably good price. It will be an older unit, of course, but still, in many cases they retain their value and they keep in very good condition. One look at the front panel of this unit explains why we call it the simplicity model. There aren't any controls besides what already the phono stage by itself has, in which case it's a power switch on the left and the phase switch on the right. And we're going to retain those switches. But as you can see, there are no other controls. There is no EQ selection, there is no speed selection, nothing of that kind. So in this particular case, we're going to be talking about the conversion to single EQ configuration, be it 15-inch per second NAB or IEC equalization, or maybe you want to have 7.5 inches. It is up to you. But the problem is you're only going to be allowed one choice. And in many cases that will be a smart decision. For example, if your whole library is recorded in 15 inches per second IEC, that's pretty much what you need. And in most cases, the simplest circuit will usually be the cleanest one. So if your goal is to listen to one particular format in the highest possible quality, then you should consider the simplicity approach. When we move from one model to another one, different ways of converting, you will see some common elements, because the circuit basically is not identical, but it's very, very similar in many ways between those four units that I have. And the units I have, they've been taken from random batches of products, so some represent earlier models and some the later ones. But the basic approach still remains. Don't be confused by this particular circuit board on top. That's just auxiliary power supply section that can be easily removed to reveal most of the circuit underneath. And right away, let's go to the section you're going to be mostly concerned with. It is this group of components and this one that represent the EQ circuit components for this particular model. There are some resistors and capacitors on left side and on the right side. And as you can see, there is one that seems to be like a new addition. And it is. That's basically what turns this particular phono stage into a very nice head preamp. This particular component has to be added if you want to go to IEC equalization. The reason is very simply understood when you look at the frequency plots of the circuits, and it can be explained in some details maybe later. But for now, essentially look at what does it take to convert the unit. Pretty much the whole rest of the unit remains the same. All you need to do in this case is remove a couple of components in this area and instead put a trim pot or variable resistor in this area. And that's it. And now, by turning this particular knob, you can adjust the high frequency response of the circuit as you run the calibration tape. And that's it. You see, you have not touched anywhere else in the circuit. You have not done any alterations, or you did, it's just one or two frequency components, frequency control components, and you're done. Your circuit retains very good sound. It used to have, your reliability is not compromised. And you can always go back if you decide to finally turn this unit back into the phono stage. As I already mentioned, that simplest form is most likely going to give you absolutely the best possible sound. So if that's your objective, certainly go for that particular configuration. One word about the particular circuit topology here. You can see that this circuit board sits on top of the standoffs. It is because it is an optional addition. And if you consider buying this model for conversion, definitely get the unit with this board in place, because it gives you 3 to 4 dB of extra gain. And in most cases, you will need that. On top of that, this circuit has some additional features which are carryovers from the phono stage design, including gain selection, high or low, and you can engage the step-up transformers, which give you about 20 dB of extra gain boost. Do we need them? Sometimes, yes. There are some heads with very low output, and in this case, having extra 20 dB of gain helps quite a bit. Like I said, having or not having this additional option on top pretty much doesn't change the whole equation. It's still going to be the same conversion. It's nice to have it. It's not an inexpensive option, so if you're shopping for the unit, it will affect its price. By itself, this option is already quite pricey. As you can see, those components are special, custom-made components, and of course, they carry some extra cost to them. So that's it for the simplicity model. Now, if single EQ option is not enough for what you would like to be doing in your system, then this moving up modification, maybe that's what you need. Maybe it's what you need. And just one look at the front panel of that model tells you pretty much the whole story. You have a couple of switches here that the simplest model didn't have, and these switches allow you at least some freedom. And what exactly is this freedom? If you look at the labels, we're going to see 15 inches per second and 30 inches per second. That's obviously the tape speed selection, and that's nice to have if you have a 30 inch per second capable machine. So just flipping this switch does the conversion between speeds. And on top of that, you see this additional switch here, which is marked NAB and IEC. Essentially, it works for 15-inch speed. And then you have two more selections, depending upon your EQ type. That's very nice. But in reality, it's not quite 3 speeds, because if you look here, you see those adjustment dials, but there are only 4 of them, not 6, like you would expect in case of true 3-speed conversion. Well, it's a conscious decision. You can't have everything. So in reality, it is a 2-speed model with just one particular EQ for low speed. Say it is IAC. You go 15-speed IAC, and you're all set. Now, the controls on the left side will be your low-speed controls, left channel and right channel. And the controls on the right will be corresponding to high speed, left channel, right channel. And they're very, very easy to adjust. When you're running calibration tape, you just turn the dial, and you can see the dial has number on it. So you can write them down, and you can go back and forth between some favorite selections, if you will. You may decide one day that you would like to have hotter selection, and you just change those numbers to your recorded numbers and you're done. It is an extra convenience. And of course, having those knobs is much easier than using screwdrivers. So it is a great convenience feature. And for adjusting this unit, you don't have to pull it out of your rack. It can be completely hidden inside, but you have full access to those controls. And you just do it externally while running the tape. It's very, very easy. But why do I say it is not perfect? Well, simply because there is extra complexity to it. So let's take a look inside. And just as in case of the previous model, we can remove this power supply option and set it aside. And here we see the familiar circuit. Except in this case, we have wires going from those components to the front panel. And behind the front panel, you have those controls, the multi-turn pots, and the switch. Actually, two toggle switches. So what you have here is an extra complexity of wires going between the sensitive circuit here and the front panel. And obviously those wires will be somewhat prone to the pickup from transformers with their radiation and just external fields. In many cases you can get away with it. Like in my particular case, our environment is fairly quiet. We live far away from industrial area, so we don't have much interference. So I can get away with this type of wiring. You see, you have almost 1 foot, maybe a little bit more of twisted wire, which is not ideal. It's working in my case because, like I said, our environment is fairly quiet, but it is not ideal. However, it is a very workable solution, and you can have it if your goal is to have front panel controls and your environment is fairly quiet. Which brings us to the unit number 3, the quiet one. It is probably the least sensitive to external interferences unit. And by looking inside, we'll understand why. It is also one of the more complicated mechanically units, but it got some benefits to it. Let's see. As you look at its front panel, you might say, oh, but it's identical to unit number 2. It's got similar controls on the front. Yes, but there will be differences as we examine the unit internally. And also you notice the lack of switches that used to be in the middle of that panel. Except, in this case, you have the switch on the right that says 30 IPS. And this is your speed selection. This unit will have 2 speeds, each one with its unique EQ calibration. In this particular case, it will be 30 inches and 15 inches IAC, all selectable through this switch. But what makes this unit quiet and special? Let's examine it inside. As before, we have to remove this power supply auxiliary board, and then I think we see right away what's so special about this particular unit. Gone are the long wires from the EQ section and the front panel. They've been replaced by long shafts, and the controls themselves now reside on the brackets right next to the sensitive area, so the wiring is exceedingly short. And all the switching is done by use of this one single relay per channel. So the whole circuit is very compact. It's basically like 2 inches square, or maybe even less. And it does everything. It still retains the convenience of the previous model because you have front panel controls that you can easily adjust using your hands. You don't need any tools for that. So it works very well in that regard. It's more complicated in terms of construction because you have to make those brackets. As you can see, they're a mirror image of each other. But it's not so complicated. If you know your way around metalwork, you can easily construct that particular configuration. It is the quietest in terms of pickup. There is absolutely dead silence with this particular unit. And that brings us to our last contestant, which is screaming, "I am everything." Well, it has some right to that statement because it is indeed very versatile unit. As we will show you in a second, it has 5 particular configurations. That's speeds and EQ. And it also includes the RIAA equalization in case you would like to use it for your phono connection as well. So yes, there is some justification for this rather obnoxious statement. Just one look at the front panel of this model reveals some information about it. That big knob on the right has 5 positions. As you can see, they're marked RIAA 7.5, 15N for 15 inches NAB, 15I, and 30. Easy to understand and easy to change with the flip of a knob. Not much else is required. Convenience. What else? You can connect this unit to multiple sources, maybe through some external switch, and enjoy multiple playback mechanisms by simply adjusting this unit accordingly. What else? How much simpler can it be? Now, like before, let's remove this power supply upgrade and examine the unit internally. And it becomes very clear that the whole key to this flexibility and convenience is this little board in the rear. Operating this unit is very easy. If you just press the front panel power switch, you see a couple of LEDs will come up indicating the particular EQ used in this case. And if you rotate the front panel switch, you will see those LEDs indicate your choice. Like in this case, it is an RIAA equalization, and now it is 7.5 inch per second speed. The circuit, of course, is not as simple as in the first unit. There are some wires still involved. Yes, the wires are fairly short. You see the distance between the circuit and the EQ location is about 4 inches. It's much better than 12 or 16 inches in unit number 2, but it's not anywhere simple or short as in unit number 1. This is just a control cable that goes to the front panel switch. So that can be long enough, it doesn't matter. And this one is a power supply cable. Those two are the cables you have to worry about. It is extremely convenient, and in this case, you see all the communication or the switches is done with relays, which is good. In some cases, those relays can be better than many switches, but still it's extra components in signal chain. So it's never going to be as nice sounding as Mrs. Simplicity, but it gets there. It has wonderful voice, and basically that's what you heard at the beginning of this particular segment. So that's the story. You see, you have to make the decision which way you want to go. You cannot have everything in one package. I would say the number 4, the last one, probably comes closest to the ideal, but it has some nasty situation where to get to the controls you have to pull it out of the rack and use your screwdriver on those small trim pads. It is not as convenient as having controls on the front panel. But you don't have to do it often, so it is okay. It's not such a big deal. The EQ selection board is fairly simple, and it can be located a couple of different ways. This is one way. I like it that way. But somebody might prefer to mount it here. And that's possible too, because all you have to do is turn the connectors around on this board and use those ears to mount it like this. It will fit nicely, it will work. I've done it that way. I still prefer this particular location, but it is up to you.